Welcome to Crimeatorium, where loss of faith in humanity is delivered to you one case at a time.
So before we get started with the other case, the case at hand, there's an update. I'm sure some of you already know this. There's an update in the case of Peggy Lynn Schroeder that I covered back on February 21st, 2021. The trial for 67-year-old Linda Laroche finally began on March 8th of this year, and she was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and hiding a corpse. She was given life in prison for the murder of Peggy and another 5 years for hiding a corpse. So the following is her speaking to the court, proclaiming her innocence.
First of all, my heart and soul go out to her family. Whoever did this to her is more than a monster. They don't deserve to breathe, but it's not me. We were gone only 2.5 hours. I pulled up next to my husband, and I said, I'm going to go drop her off. At that time, I said she wanted to go to her grandmother's, and I said, I'll be back in a little bit. And so I came back in 2.5 hours, and it was over a 2-hour round trip for me. So the other 30 minutes were accounted for because we were waiting for her friend to meet us. And had I ever known, and I was so ashamed that she left. And I asked her to wait for me when I went back to look to see if her friend was at that gas station. I was so ashamed that she was gone that I didn't have an explanation for my family. And I believe I couldn't bring myself to say, I don't know, but I figured she was okay. I knew she was getting picked up, and I figured she'd call me and tell me where to send her stuff.
Well, I'm really pleased that Peggy has finally received justice. She certainly deserved it. And with that being said, let's get on with the next case. On January 29th, 2010, 34-year-old Tanya Nicotina had just finished work at the Community Head Start program in Salt Lake City, Utah, where she taught preschool-age kids. She started the car and sat behind the wheel, talking to her fiancé, Rob Hernandez. They were set to be married on Valentine's Day, just 2 weeks from this time. Tanya had just told Rob how much she loved him when she suddenly dropped the phone and screamed out, "Oh my God!" Rob waited on the phone for several minutes, but she never uttered another word. Thinking she had gotten into an accident, Rob drove the short distance from his house to her work, all the while he kept the phone near his ear. When he arrived, he tried walking through the police tape, but an officer stopped him. Rob told the cop he believed that his fiancée, Tanya, had gotten into an accident while driving his car. The officer calmly informed Rob that Tanya had not been in an accident. She had been shot, and the suspect was a woman. Later on at the hospital, Rob was informed that Tanya had died. Tanya met Rob in 2008, 3 years after her divorce from Dale Jankowski. She had custody of their 2 children, 9-year-old Stefan and 7-year-old Alexandra. Dale, who was 45 years old at this time, had a close relationship with his mother, 70-year-old Mary Nance Hanson, who went by Nance. She visited Dale almost every day at his home, so she was usually there when Stefan and Alexandra visited their dad on weekends. Hanson never liked Tanya. A friend reported that she presented her with a coupon for a feminine product slipped inside an envelope as a gift for her birthday one year. Hanson had become increasingly anxious about Tanya moving out of state with the kids and not being able to see them again. On January 29, 2010, Hanson packed her pistol and drove to a car wash near Tanya's work and waited. Once Tanya exited her work and got into her car, Hanson approached from the back of the vehicle and shot her 5 times in the head. Convinced Tanya was dead, she sat on the sidewalk and dialed 911.
911 emergency. What is your emergency?
Hi, it's Sally.
So has there been a shooting?
Yes, Sally?
What? This is the gunshot from 350 East, 3900 South. Complainant
Okay,
stating...
hold on a minute. 350, you gave us 336.
It's about that. I'm not sure. Okay, it's probably 336 because I guessed.
Okay.
I don't actually know yet.
Hold on a minute. Are you in the parking lot of Head Start?
In the back, yes.
In the back.
Yep.
Now, did you see someone shooting a gun?
She's in her car. Her boyfriend's car.
Okay, are you still at Head Start?
Yep, sure am. Waiting for the cops.
Okay, what is your name?
Nance Hanson.
Nance Hanson?
Nance.
Okay,
Hanson.
what number are you calling from?
From my cell phone.
Okay, so this female is in the car with her boyfriend?
No, in her boyfriend's car. She works here at the Head Start, and she had just gotten off work.
She was just getting off work?
Yes.
Okay. Where is the car parked? Is it in the back parking lot?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
What color is the car?
It's a silver Dodge Ram, I think, or something of the sort. Oh, here comes the cop. Okay.
Okay. You don't know if she's still alive or not? How did she get into the car?
Now, I'm going to go.
Okay, hold on. I don't have any officers there yet. Okay, so I just want you to stay on the phone with me until they get there. Okay? Are you in a vehicle or are you just standing in the parking lot? Hello? Hello?
I think she may have disconnected. And I do have medical, I think, en route now.
Okay, my guys just arrived.
Are they arriving now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let you...
Hanson was arrested, booked into jail, and charged with murder. She pleaded guilty on August 18th, 2010. In the courtroom, Hanson said to the judge, "I would like to be sent forthwith to the prison, and I would like to request death by lethal injection." When told her case was not eligible for the death penalty, Hanson told the judge, "Well then, I guess I didn't do a good enough job." This insensitive statement infuriated Tanya's fiancé, Rob, and others in the courtroom. Hanson also wanted to make it clear that her son, Dale, had nothing to do with the crime. Her sentencing hearing was held on October 22nd, just 2 months after she killed Tanya. She was given 15 years to life. Rob, who has been devastated by Tanya's death, said of Hanson, "She will someday have to meet her maker. When that happens, may she burn in hell." Hanson had a parole hearing in 2020 at the age of 82. She was asked to tell the board what happened on the day of the crime.
That I had to get rid of her. That's not me. I don't like doing that type of thing. That's, I don't run around with a gun just shooting people. I fired through that back window, and I think it went through the back window and then went out either the front passenger. She didn't know what to do. She was scared, and she hollered, "Oh my God." She had moaned or something, and I had thought she was already dead. And then when she moaned like that, I said, "Oh my gosh, she's still alive. I can't just let her sit here and suffer." And so I tried to, I shot her again. That must have been the last shot that I used. I believe that I was being influenced by evil spirits, primarily by Satan. I was trying to protect my grandkids. That's what I wanted most, just to keep those little kids safe so they could be with their dad.
The board denied Hanson's request for parole. Nance Hanson is now spending her last years of life in a jail cell. Her letters to Dale go unanswered. Tanya's children moved to Florida, where they were raised by her family. It seems she lacked the wisdom that comes with old age, and in the end, lost everything. Since we're on the topic of mother-in-laws, this one is from the early 1900s. I hope you enjoy it. Stella Christofi was born in 1900 in a small village in Cyprus, a country southeast of Greece. Styllou never received an education and was illiterate all her life. She married one of the poorest men in the village when she was 14, and the couple went on to have 5 children. When their only son Stavros was born, they hoped that he would someday help provide for the family. After saving up some money, Stavros migrated to London in 1941. He landed a job as a waiter for the esteemed Café de Paris, one of the leading theater clubs in London. It was here that Stavros met the beautiful German-born Hella Bleicher, a model who worked in a clothing store in the area. Stavros and Hella were instantly attracted to each other and fell in love. Stavros knew his mother would be upset, but in 1942, the happy couple married anyway. Stavros and Hella lived in a large 2-story home in Hampstead with their children, when in 1953, Styllou had forgiven Stavros for getting married behind her back to a foreign woman. The couple's 3 children were Nicholas 11, Peter 10, and Stella 9. Styllou had never met Hella and her grandchildren. It was now time to do that. Once in London, Styllou would find work and save enough money to return to Cyprus and buy some property. The visit went fine at first, but it eventually turned Stavros and Hella's life into a living hell. Styllou wasn't fluent in English or German, and Hella wasn't fluent in Greek, making it difficult for them to communicate with one another. Styllou was critical of the way Hella decorated the house and how she and Stavros were raising the children. She also felt that Hella squandered money on makeup and other frivolous things. Styllou also voiced her disappointment in Stavros for marrying a foreign woman. After 12 months, Styllou's outburst became too much for Hella. She told Stavros that she was taking the children to Germany and not coming back until his mother was moved out of the house. Styllou overheard Hella and Stavros talking, and she knew just enough English by that time to understand the gist of the conversation. She felt that Stavros was taking Hella's side, and this greatly upset her. On the night of July 29, 1954, Stavros was at work and the children were asleep in bed. While Hella was in the bathroom washing up, Styllou picked up a cast iron ash plate from the cooker and hit Hella over the back of the head with it. The blow was so severe it fractured her skull and knocked her unconscious. Styllou removed Hella's wedding ring from her finger, then strangled her to death with a scarf. She dragged Hella's body onto a landing just outside the door leading to the yard. Styllou placed paraffin-soaked newspaper around the body and lit it on fire. A neighbor walking his dog saw the smoke and peered through the fence and saw Styllou stoking a fire on what he thought was a tailor's dummy. He would later say that the arms were raised and bent back at the elbow. The fire was getting out of control and was dangerously close to the house. Panicked, Styllou went into the street and in her broken English yelled, "Please come, fire burning, children sleeping." The fire brigade arrived and saw Hella, who was partially burned and covered with blood. They immediately called the police. While searching the home, the police found Hella's wedding ring in Styllou's room, as well as other evidence. The police questioned Styllou at the station about what happened that night. She told them the fire started as a result of liquid paraffin that had spilled on the ground. As for Hella's wedding ring, she found it in the house and thought it was a curtain ring. She claimed she saw 2 men dressed in suits running away from where Hella's body was discovered. The police didn't believe her account of what happened that night and arrested her the next day for murder. Stavros and her attorney wanted to use the insanity defense to avoid the death penalty, but Styllou refused. To Stavros and her attorney, she said, "I am a poor woman of no education, but I am not a mad woman." One official who questioned the death penalty in Styllou's case said the mere fact she did not claim insanity shows she is not of sound mind. Styllou was taken to Holloway Prison in London, a facility for women and young adults only. Holloway opened in 1852 and remained in use until 2016, when it permanently closed its doors. It housed Myra Hindley, who was known for the Moores murders, also Ruth Ellis, who was convicted of murdering her lover and was the last woman hanged in Britain in 1955. The chief medical officer examined Styllou and concluded that she was insane but fit to stand trial. The murder trial began on October 25, 1954 in the Old Bailey. Prosecutors, who referred to Styllou as a stupid woman during the proceedings, entered Styllou's bloody, paraffin-covered shoes into evidence and told the jury about her attempt to clean the bloody floor. The neighbor who saw Styllou stoking the fire that night also testified. Styllou was the last witness to take the stand, and despite the compelling evidence against her, she protested her innocence. It took the jury of 10 men and 2 women a little less than 2 hours to find Styllou guilty. The judge sentenced her to death by hanging. As part of the appeal process, Styllou was examined by 3 more psychiatrists, all of whom ruled that she was sane by the legal standards of the day. Styllou asked for a Greek Orthodox cross to be hung on the wall of the execution chamber, and the wish was granted. The cross remained there until 1967. On the morning of December 15, 1954 at 9 a.m., Styllou was executed by hanging. She was buried in an unmarked grave on the prison grounds. The Murder Abolition of Death Penalty Act, 1965, made provisions for the return of the bodies of executed men and women. Styllou's family chose not to take her body, and it remained buried on the prison grounds until a prison redevelopment in 1971. Styllou's body was exhumed and moved to Brookwood Cemetery, where she was buried with 3 other inmates in a single unmarked grave. A granite memorial was placed some years later to mark the 4 women buried there. In 2019, Stavros Christofi's son, Toby, raised concerns he had about his grandmother's case, specifically in regards to the language barrier, cultural prejudices, and her mental health. Experts that were part of the BBC TV series called Mystery Murder and My Family agreed to review Styllou's case. Not long after the review began, a shocking story was uncovered. In 1924, Styllou murdered her mother-in-law with the help of 2 other women. They brutally beat her with objects and shoved burning pieces of wood into her mouth and down her throat. The case went to trial in 1925, and each was found not guilty due to insufficient evidence. Styllou's husband left the marriage after the trial, leaving her to raise their children alone. After further research, another chilling story surfaced. Styllou's mother-in-law, Maria Christofi, and her lover had murdered her husband back in 1911. It is theorized that the family used Styllou to exact vigilante on Maria for disgracing their family name. Violence carried out in the name of justice was acceptable in some Cypriot circles. At the conclusion of the review, Toby appeared on the show and listened to the findings. They reported that their psychologists, using modern methods to evaluate the case, were in agreement that Styllou Christofi was mentally impaired and should have not been sentenced to death. The legal expert that reviewed Styllou's case said the following: Mrs. Christofi was deprived of the opportunity to advance the proper defense in the course of her trial, thus almost inevitably resulting in her being convicted of murder and the death penalty being imposed. Styllou wrote several letters to Stavros while she was in prison. She never took responsibility for what she did, nor did she acknowledge the grief of her son and grandchildren. Stavros eventually remarried and had more children. He was never able to fully heal. He visited his mother once in prison before breaking off all contact with her. I cannot find it in my heart to forgive my mother. The word mother has become a mockery to me, he said.
Good night, sweet lady, ain't no need to cry. I'll be there